These are the tales from South Florida for you, with your host, Bill Monty.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of Tales from South Florida. I don't know about you or your parents, but in my house, college or continuing education past high school was never really made a priority. But when I graduated, I did feel like I needed to go to college. Now, understand, this was really the mid-1970s, and at that time, my idea of continuing education was probably different than it should have been. To wit, my brother and I signed up for courses at Broward Community College. Now, it's called Broward College, I know. But we signed up for Broward Community College, and I took archery. At the time, I was, 17 or 18. I don't know why I thought archery was good, but I thought it would be fun. And then for a real class, I took French. And that was my scholastic career for about the next 7 years. I wouldn't begin to continue my education again until about 1982. I was coming out of my first marriage, which had not lasted a very long time. Was living up in Tallahassee at the time. You would have thought, well, this is a great place to go to school right there. But no, after trying to make it, working a job, but having really not a lot of money and no means to get a car or to get around, I came back home. Boomerang kid, right? And decided that I would go back to school and pursue the one thing I had always wanted to be. Now, my options for careers had changed a lot. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a lawyer because Perry Mason was my favorite show. And when I started going to school, especially as I got to junior high and high school, I wanted to be a teacher. But the one thing I always wanted to do was to be an actor. Again, in my house, saying that I wanted to go into theater as a way to make a living, that just was not going to be accepted by my parents. It wasn't going to happen. By the time I came back, I guess they were desperate for me to find anything. Now in my early 20s, what was I going to do? I found myself back at Broward Community College studying acting and theater. Why am I telling you all of this? You're like, Bill, what do we care about your college career? Well, one is that this episode was actually going to be about Broward Community College and its history and its importance in our community. It's also going to tie it into Miami-Dade Community College, where I worked for about 5 years. And then on June 3rd, something happened to change the idea of that episode. When I started my theater classes at Broward Community College, the first teacher that I had was a gentleman named Joe Cappello. Now, if you took theater any time for many, many years at Broward College, then Joe Cappello was one of the main teachers there and was probably a huge influence. He was definitely a huge influence for me. Now, get this, as I was in the classes, most of the students were around 18 or 19 years old. I was sitting around 23, maybe I was even 24 at that point. But Joe Cappello welcomed me with open arms. He thought I would be a great addition to the theater program. And as their production that was going to open in the fall came around, he invited me to audition for it. And I got a part. There was a part, the show is called a Bedroom Farce. It's an English farce, English comedy. And there was the role of a father. Since I was the oldest of all the students, I got cast in that role. That play happened to be very successful. We won awards in Florida. We went to a national competition. And Joe Cappello was just a great mentor. He was very down to earth. We used to call him Papa Smurf because except for having blue skin, he kind of looked like Papa Smurf. He was about as tall as Papa Smurf. But he had a lot of energy. He was a dynamic personality. He liked to tell stories about the jobs he had had. One of his biggest prides was that he was in a play. I don't know if it was off Broadway or if it was on Broadway. I can't remember now. With the actor Dana Andrews, who was a pretty big actor in the 40s and the 50s. So being in a play with him was kind of a big deal. Joe taught me a lot about acting. He also did the stage fighting classes. He did the theater history classes. And he was there just to talk or to have a good time with. As we went through the competitions for the play Bedroom Farce, he stayed with me, sharing his wisdom of the years. Now, I'm going to be honest, at the time I thought Joe was really, really old. He was probably about 55 at that time. After I left the college, I actually auditioned for a job that Joe sent me for on the audition. It was an audition that would actually change my life. I got that job, but taking the job meant I could no longer be a part of the theater program there. Because of that, I lost my scholarship and was just unable to finish out my scholastic career at Broward Community College. But because of that audition, I met the woman who is now my wife. And with us together, we produced the woman who is my daughter. So Joe Cappello really changed my life in so many ways. Fast forward to 2014, 2015, I decided to reach out to Joe. We had become friends on Facebook and started chatting. So we got together for lunch at Rob's Bagel Land in Tamarack. We had a great time talking about the old gang, the people from Bedroom Farce from that time, him telling me about life. At the time, Donald Trump was running for his first go at being president, and Joe was very concerned about that. I remember joshing him that there's no way Trump could win, and he was wasting time being so worried, and he kind of looked at me and said, "Bill, I've lived a long time. I've seen people like this get what they want before." Well, Joe, once again, you were right. We kept meeting over the years, on and off for lunch or brunch or maybe a breakfast. I was amazed at the energy that Joe still had even as he aged. I remember one of the last times that I saw him, I said, "Joe, what has life taught you? What can you tell me about living a good life?" And he said, "Bill, you gotta grab life by the balls before it grabs you. Because if it gets a hold of your balls, it will never let go, and you won't be in control anymore." And he smiled, and we both laughed. And I thought, that's actually pretty good advice. Even what I know about life right now, that's not bad advice. In my other podcast, Bill Monty's Guide for Getting Older, I've started a series of interviews where I'm talking to people as they age. Not necessarily old people, as we would call it, but people, they can be in their 40s, 50s, 60s. What is life teaching you? What are you learning? What can you pass on? If you could go back in time, what would you say to your younger self? And I happened to drive by one of the places where Joe and I used to meet to have lunch. And I said, I have to call Joe because he'd be perfect. He'd be perfect for this interview. He's funny. Last time I talked to him, he was still sharp as a tack. I know he was getting up there in years. But I thought he would be the perfect guest, the perfect person to interview. Tuesday evening, I was working on stuff for this podcast. I've started looking at AI, using AI to generate animation or cartoon images of me to use on YouTube thumbnails. And it created one of me that as I looked at it, I thought, oh my God, I don't know if that looks like me, but it sure looks like Joe Cappello back when I first met him. The next day I learned that Joe passed away on Tuesday. He was 96 years old. What a wonderful, long, great life he had. And though we hadn't talked for a while, I'm going to miss him. I'm going to miss knowing that he's there. And I'm going to remind you at this point, in this Tales from South Florida episode, that if there's someone you haven't talked to or reached out to for a while, be sure to go ahead and do it. Because there comes a time when you realize that your tomorrows are limited, and one day is today. Hey, thank you for taking a talk with me down memory lane as I remember Broward College, how it introduced me to Joe, who introduced me to my wife, and let me share the great memory of him. If you were a student of Joe's or Miss M's at Broward Community College, and you'd like to drop me a line, I'd sure appreciate it. You can do that at billmonty04@gmail.com, or you can go down into the show notes and click on the SpeakPipe link. SpeakPipe is a tool that lets you leave a 90-second message for me, and I'd love to hear from you. about your experiences at Broward Community College, your life in South Florida, if you don't live in South Florida anymore, your memories of it. I'm always looking for new ideas for episodes, and maybe your idea will be the next for this podcast. Be sure to hit that follow or subscribe button, friends. It's free, and it reminds you of when a new episode of Tales from South Florida is dropping. Until next time that we speak, I remind you as always, please be safe and be kind. And thank you, Joe. It was great knowing you.
Let's take a talk down memory lane, 'cause the stories around here are just insane. Pirates World, the Sporto and Wolfies too, Palm Beach to Key West, that's where we grew. These are the tales from South Florida for you, with your host Bill Monty.